Imagine a world where the currency in your pocket is no longer the standard, where the technology in your phone was designed by a rival power, and where the global map is being redrawn, not with bullets, but with microchips. We are currently living through the most significant shift in power since the fall of the Soviet Union. In the US, it isn't just watching, it's panicking. Today we go behind the headlines to understand why Washington isn't just worried about China, it's terrified. To understand this conflict, we have to look past the headlines. We hear about trade wars and tariffs, but this is a silent, calculated race for global supremacy. From the high-tech boardrooms in Beijing to the halls of the Pentagon, the strategy is clear. Whoever dominates the technology of 2026 controls the future of the planet. Today, we are breaking down the three pillars of this silent war. The economic trap. The first pillar isn't missiles. It isn't aircraft carriers. It isn't nuclear weapons. It's economics. For decades, the United States believed that bringing China into the global economy would make China richer and eventually more politically open. In 2001, China joined the World Trade Organization. To many American leaders, it looked like the beginning of a new era. American companies rushed into China, drawn by one simple promise: lower costs. Factories that once operated in Detroit, Ohio, and California slowly moved across the Pacific. Consumers benefited, products became cheaper, corporate profits reached record highs. It seemed like everyone was winning, or at least that's what the world believed. While the West celebrated globalization, China was quietly following a completely different strategy. Beijing wasn't trying to become just another player in the global economy. It wanted something much bigger. It wanted to become the factory of the world. Year after year, China invested billions into manufacturing, modern ports, high-speed rail, massive industrial zones, advanced infrastructure. Entire cities were built around production. Millions of workers entered the manufacturing sector, and slowly, China became the engine of the global economy. Today, countless products used around the world, from smartphones to laptops to household appliances, begin their journey inside Chinese factories. That success transformed China. Hundreds of millions of people escaped poverty. Chinese companies expanded across the globe, and Beijing gained something even more powerful than money: influence. The more countries depended on Chinese manufacturing, the more leverage China gained. At first, Washington welcomed China's rise. Many American policymakers believed economic cooperation would create long-term stability. Instead, the opposite happened. China didn't become dependent on America. America became increasingly dependent on China. Then came the moment that exposed everything: the COVID-19 pandemic. Factories across China shut down. Supply chains began to collapse. Hospitals struggled to obtain medical equipment. Manufacturers ran out of critical components. Shipping costs surged. And suddenly, governments around the world realized something they had ignored for years. What happens if the world's factory suddenly stops? That question changed Washington's strategy forever. This was no longer just about trade, it was about national security. Because if another country controls the production of critical goods, it can influence markets, pressure governments, disrupt industries without firing a single shot. But manufacturing was only the beginning, because the real battle isn't about who builds the most products, it's about who controls the technology inside them. And that's where this silent war becomes far more dangerous. For decades, China mastered manufacturing. It became the factory of the world. But building the world's products was never the final goal. The real goal was to control the technology inside them. Because in today's world, power is no longer measured only by tanks or aircraft carriers or even nuclear weapons. It's measured by microchips, smaller than a fingernail, almost invisible to the human eye, yet powerful enough to determine the future of entire nations. Think about it, every smartphone, every laptop, every electric vehicle, every satellite orbiting above the Earth, every advanced fighter jet, every AI system changing our lives. They all depend on one tiny piece of silicon. Without it, modern civilization would simply stop. No internet, no smartphones, no advanced weapons, no artificial intelligence, no digital economy. That's why microchips have become the most valuable resource of the 21st century. And America knows it. For decades, the United States dominated this industry. American companies designed many of the world's fastest processors, developed the software behind them, and led the technological revolution. This wasn't just business, it was power, economic power, military power, technological power. Then, China changed the game. Beijing wasn't satisfied with assembling products designed by someone else. It wanted to design them, build them, control them, and eventually lead them. Billions of dollars were poured into research, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, semiconductors, advanced robotics, supercomputers. This wasn't ordinary investment, it was preparation for the future. Because Beijing understood something long before many others did. The country that leads tomorrow's technology won't just build better products, it will shape the global economy, control critical supply chains, strengthen its military, and influence the balance of power for decades to come. Washington was watching, at first with confidence, then with concern, and finally with alarm. Because this was no longer a competition over cheaper products. It was becoming a race to control the future itself. But there was one problem. One tiny island, just over 100 miles from mainland China, held the key to everything. Taiwan, an island of just 23 million people, yet one of the most strategically important places on Earth. Because inside Taiwan are some of the most advanced semiconductor factories ever built. Factories capable of producing chips so complex, so precise, that only a handful of companies on the planet can manufacture them. And the world's most powerful economies depend on them. America depends on them. Europe depends on them. Japan depends on them. And increasingly, China depends on them. That reality created a dangerous vulnerability. Because if access to those chips were interrupted, the consequences would be felt across the entire world. Production lines would slow. Technology companies would struggle. Supply chains would be disrupted, and entire industries could face uncertainty. Washington understood the risk, and it decided to act. Not with missiles, not with warships, but with restrictions. In recent years, the United States introduced a series of export controls aimed at limiting China's access to some of the world's most advanced semiconductor technology. The goal was simple: protect America's technological advantage and slow China's ability to develop cutting-edge capabilities. Suddenly, the battle had entered a new phase, a phase where access to technology became a strategic weapon, where advanced chips became as important as oil, and where supply chains became matters of national security. Beijing saw those restrictions as a warning that dependence on foreign technology could become a weakness. So China responded the only way it could, by accelerating its own technological development, investing billions more into research, supporting domestic semiconductor companies, expanding advanced manufacturing, and pushing aggressively into artificial intelligence. Because this race isn't only about chips, it's about what chips make possible: artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, cybersecurity, advanced communications, military modernization, and the technologies that will define the coming decades. Whoever leads in these fields won't simply gain economic advantages. They could shape global standards, influence emerging industries, and strengthen their position on the world stage. That is why both Washington and Beijing view this competition as far more than a business rivalry. It is a contest over innovation, influence, security, and long-term power. Every new breakthrough, every new processor, every new AI model is another step forward in a race neither side wants to lose. And as the competition grows, the stakes continue to rise, because history has shown that when great powers compete for leadership, the consequences rarely remain confined to laboratories and boardrooms. Eventually, the pressure begins to spread into diplomacy, into trade, into military planning, and into the regions where both sides believe their interests are on the line. Which brings us to the most dangerous flashpoint in this entire rivalry, a place where economic power, technological competition, and military strategy all collide, the Taiwan Strait. And that is where this silent war comes closest to becoming something far more dangerous.
Trade wasn't enough. Technology wasn't enough. As competition intensified, both Washington and Beijing began preparing for something far more serious. The next stage of this rivalry would no longer be fought only inside factories or inside research laboratories. Instead, it would increasingly be shaped by military power. At the center of that tension lies Taiwan, an island of just 23 million people, yet one that sits at the heart of the world's semiconductor industry. For China, Taiwan is a core national interest. For the United States, Taiwan is a strategic partner, and losing influence there could reshape the balance of power across the Indo-Pacific. That is why Chinese military activity around Taiwan has continued to increase, with warships, fighter jets, and large-scale military exercises becoming increasingly common. The United States has responded by strengthening its alliances, increasing its military presence and continuing naval patrols through the Taiwan Strait. Every move by one side is answered by another. Every warning raises the stakes. The greatest danger may not be a deliberate war. It may be a mistake. One military aircraft, one naval collision, one misunderstanding. History has shown that great conflicts often begin, not because anyone wanted them, but because no one managed to stop them. If conflict were ever to erupt over Taiwan, the consequences would extend far beyond Asia. Global trade would be disrupted, financial markets would react, technology production could slow dramatically, and billions of people around the world would feel the impact without ever seeing the battlefield. So, why is America so concerned about China's rise? Because this is no longer just a competition over trade or technology. It is a competition over who will shape the future of artificial intelligence, the future of global manufacturing, the future of military power, and perhaps the future of the international order. The silent war has already begun, not with bombs, not with bullets, but with factories, microchips, and artificial intelligence. The question is no longer whether this competition exists. The question is how it will end. Thank you for watching.